Welcome, everybody. Today we are going to talk about some Python basics. This is the second video in the CS0 Fundamentals of Programming course. So if you haven't already, please make sure you watch the video on installing PyCharm before you get started here. And a couple of reminders at the beginning of the video. Number one, make sure you watch the whole video through before you start working on the code. It's important for recall that you watch the entire video and then you remember it when you're doing the code. Obviously, you can go back to it if there's some stuff you don't remember, if you need to double check something. And anytime you have a question or if you run into something that looks different than what I've got on my screen or that you need help with, feel free to just stop and raise your hand and I'll come over and we'll take a look at it together. So like I said, we're going to do some Python basics today. And the first thing we want to do is open up PyCharm if you don't already have it open. So I'm going to go open it up, and you'll notice the project we created last time, the Sandbox project, is the only one available. So I'm going to click on it, and it's going to bring us to a view that should look pretty familiar. This is the Hello World program we wrote last time, and if you remember, it does one thing. It prints out Hello World. So the first Python basic is something we've already covered. It's how to print things to the user, and you do that by typing in print. And this is an object called a function in Python. So anytime you see something with these two parentheses here, that tells you that you're using a function. And a function is just a set of code or a little piece of code that does something specific. We'll talk about those more as we get further on in the semester, but all you need to know right now is that print does exactly what you expect it to, which is it prints what's in between the parentheses. And for strings, which we will talk about today, a string is a type of variable that just contains letters, characters, numbers, stuff like that. It's a piece of text. Those go in quotes in Python. So if I want to have it print something else out, I put that in quotes. I try to spell it correctly, which PyCharm helpfully lets me know when I haven't. And then I wrap it in what's called a print statement, just print parentheses. It should look like this. And you should be able to guess what's going to happen when I hit run here. It's going to say hello world, and then it's going to say this is the second sentence. I can put as many of these in here as I need to. But after a couple of them, it's going to get pretty repetitive. So this is where we'll stop with printing. The other thing I'll say is, sort of one of the basics of programming is a program basically just does everything that you tell it to do in order. So you'll notice I've got these little numbers over here on the side. These are called line numbers. First line is print hello world. Second line is print this is a second sentence. Third line is print this is a third sentence. Generally, Python programs go from top to bottom, and they do everything you tell them to. Now, when we get into some more advanced techniques later in the semester, we'll add functions, we'll add some code that either runs multiple times or maybe doesn't run in some situations. But a good basic understanding to have is it's going to go top to bottom and do everything you tell it to. So, just printing is important to be able to do, but obviously you can't do a lot with that if you want to just print set text. So another sort of core concept in programming and a core concept in Python is the idea of a variable. And a variable is very similar to the way variables work in your math class. It is a sort of a named object that stores a value. So, in math class, you might have something like 5 plus x equals 12. X represents a potential value, and the only solution to that equation in the real space is going to be 7 because 5 plus 7 is equal to 12. When you get into a little bit more advanced math, you have things like x squared is equal to 9. Well, there's two solutions for that, right? -3 and +3. And so that x can be different things depending on the set of numbers you're working with or the context you're in. So in Python, the way you declare a variable, this is simpler than most other languages, is just by typing in, you give it a name. So this variable is named x. That's not a very good variable name. We'll talk about why a little bit later, but for now, for the similarity with algebra, we're going to call it x. And we might have another variable called y, and let's say that y is 7.5. So what I have done with these two lines of code is I have named two variables, x and y, and I have given them values. X is 7 and y is 7.5. And this is very, very simple in Python. It's very easy to declare variables. In some languages, you have to say what type it is. In Python, it does all of that for you. So you'll notice when I run this program, I don't get anything new. So I've added a couple of lines of code that do something under the hood, but they don't give me anything new on the screen. So if I want to see these variables that I've just created, I can say print x and I can say print y. And you'll notice I'm not putting quotes around these because they're not a string, they're a variable. So when I hit run, I get my hello world, second and third sentence, and then I get these two variables represented, 7 and 7.5, which is exactly what we'd expect, right? Variables don't just have to be numbers, and they can have more complicated names. So let's say I want to have a variable called sentence. I do type in sentence, and I set it equal to something. And I can set it equal to, in this case, it's a string value. So this is an English sentence. That's true, in addition to being a valid variable declaration. So again, if I run this, it's not going to do anything with sentence until I say print it. And so now when I run it, and you should be able to predict what's going to happen here, it's going to print out, every time you see a print statement, I get that represented down here in the little output window. So I have and I've actually got to scroll the output window. I've got hello world, my second and third sentence, I've got my two variables. And I've got my English sentence, which is printing out. Now, if I take this print statement away, it's not going to print that out anymore. Just declaring the variable is not enough to get it to print. I have to actually have my print statement here. And when I run it, I get my sentence back. So once you declare variables, you can start to use them in different ways in your program. One way we can use them is to put them in a print statement. But we can also do some basic manipulations with them. And we're going to wrap all of these in print statements just so we see what's happening immediately. So I can print x plus x. If you know what 7 plus 7 is, think it in your head before I run this. It's 14. So this prints out 7 plus 7. I could print x plus y, which is going to be 14.5, if my math is correct, it is. And you can use all of the basic mathematic operations. You can do print x minus y, you can do print x times y, and you can do print x divided by y. And these will all give us the correct response when we run it. So I'm not going to check the math here. You're welcome to do that on your own if you'd like to. But generally, Python gets the math correctly, with a couple of caveats around decimals that, again, we'll talk about later in the semester. But this is basic print statements, basic variable manipulation. This is how you start to get some of your own information into Python and do some stuff with it. So to sort of recap for this video, this is how you do a print statement in Python. You type in print hello world. This is how you declare a variable in Python. You give it a name. So in this case, this variable is named x, this variable is named y. I've got another variable down here named sentence. And then we can manipulate variables with things like plus, minus, subtract, and divide. There's other methods of variable manipulation we'll talk about in a different video, but for now I want to just cover the basics. So what I would like you to do after this video is go ahead and write a little script that prints a couple of sentences out to the user, and create a couple of variables that have number values, and show me that you can sort of add those or subtract those, and create a variable that has a string value and show me you can print that out. So 3 things. Number 1, print a couple of things to the user. Number 2, create and manipulate some variables that have number values. And number 3, create a variable that has a string value and print it out to the user. And when you've got through that, raise your hand, let me see it. This isn't going to be a coding challenge. This is just going to be an in-class skills check grade. So all you have to do is get that in your PyCharm window, get it done, and show it to me, and you'll get a grade for that. All right, well, thank you all for your attention. And when you have shown me the little program that you've written, you're ready to move on to the next video.